Hello and welcome back to The Economic Gamer. I'm your host, Mr. Wei. Today we're going to be exploring different frameworks for evaluating purchases in Clash of Clans. This video took me longer than I expected because it turned out to be more complicated than I anticipated to come up with a useful framework for evaluating purchases, right? My goal was to determine a simple way for rating the value of what you get from store items. And as I started coming up with formulas, each one had different problems in it. And so what I've done is I've left 6 different formulas intact that all have their own pros and cons. And I'm going to go over what they are, how I derived them, and how I'm planning to use them in the future to evaluate in-game purchases. So here they all are: simple, limiting factor, scarcity balancing, vibes-based, competitive play, and defenses only. And we will explore each one in greater detail right now. Starting with simple and unweighted, and this one is the most mathematically pure way. All that I did was count up all of the in-game days that you need for everything, counting builders, lab, ores, builder base research, and pets. And then I added those all up into a total of 14,198 days. And then anything that you buy, you just take the amount of time that it saves you, you divide it by that number of days, and that is how much game progress you've made. So for example, a book of building, if it saves 13 days, you divide 13 by 14,198, and you will have purchased 0.092% of the game. This is a tough number to process for the human mind, so I have also converted that into something much more intuitive for us, which what I've done is taken the dollar cost of whatever it was that's been purchased, divided it by the amount of progress that you get, and this will tell us what rate you would be paying to unlock the entire game at that rate. So if you could buy things that cost the same as the Book of Building to save 13 days off of everything, builders, labs, ores, builder-based pets, then it would cost you $7,216 to purchase the entire game at the rate of the Book of Building, using the best rate for gems and assuming that you're saving 13 days per book. Okay. There's a problem with this method, which is that some things in the game have heavier weight than other things. For example, you get 6 builders, really 6.6 if you count everything, so whereas you only get 1.5 lab days per day. So in that sense, the lab is worth more, like time saved in the lab is worth about 4 times as much as time saved by the builders. And this model does not account for that. So I came up with another concept to take that into account, where we're going to use category weighting to multiply by the time saved and the category total. So we're doing the same thing as before, except we're adding a category weight. And the way that I determined those weights is I looked at how long it will take you with free-to-play progress to unlock everything if you are going as fast as possible with free-to-play bonuses. And I talked about that in my first video, which if you want to know all the details, you can look at that. Okay, so as you can see, using the free-to-play progress amounts, the lab takes the longest, then builders, then starry ore, then glowy ore, shiny ores, pretty low, pets, and the builder base is pretty fast. So now what we do is we take the amount of time saved, we multiply it by the category total, which is not these here. The category total is actually going to be the the raw total, like 6.6 times this for builders, 1.5 times that for the lab, 6 or 7.6 times for Starry Ore, etc., etc. And then you multiply it by the category weight, and you get how much progress of the game that you get considering limiting factors, right? So it gives a heavier weight to the things that are more limited, and it gives a lower weight to the things that are less limited. So when we plug those in, for example, if you have a book of fighting, I'm going to use these same two examples, a book of fighting and a book of building, that each save 15 days, just to give you a kind of a sense for how these different frameworks stack up. Book of Fighting saving 15 days, you divide that by the total number of lab hours you need to max everything, you multiply that by the category weight that we determined over here, and you get 0.15%. Again, that's a hard number to understand, so we're going to convert that into a rate that you would pay to unlock the whole game if everything had equivalent deals to this. So we have, it comes out to $4,403 to unlock the whole game at this rate of the Book of Fighting using this framework. For comparison, the Book of Building, if you also save 15 days, and it costs the same, so you might think that it would be the similar rate, but no, because there's so many more builder hours required to unlock the game, and the weight on builders is much lower. You're only getting 0.03% for a Book of Building, even if you save the same number of days. And when you turn that into a more humanly comprehensible number, it would cost you $19,375 to unlock the whole game at this rate for the Book of Building, using this framework. Okay, I like this a lot better than the previous one, even though it's not as pure mathematically. It does, it makes more sense to a player of the game because you're not just buying, I mean, basically no one is just going to buy the whole game without actually playing it. So it makes sense for us that we should have heavier weight on the things that are more limited in the game, that is harder to come by. The problem with this one is that I feel like it doesn't, well, a couple of problems. One is it's not showing a limited enough, right? So limiting factor, the builder-based things have very low limit. Shiny ore, you're gonna stop needing shiny ore at some point. So in some ways, it makes more sense to think about it that you get zero progress at all from buying those things that are not limited. Same with pets. You're going to finish all of these before you finish these. So why would you buy them? You know what I'm saying? So also notice that the ores end up taking about 39%, maybe even 40% of the whole game is hero ores using this framework. So although it makes sense mathematically, from a player perspective, I feel like it kind of doesn't make that much sense. So I came up with this next concept called scarcity balancing. Here I wanted to take much more into account that you are not going to need all of the resources that you get. Like your daily free-to-play progress of shiny ores turns out to be basically worthless after you get to 655 days of shiny progress, because that's enough to max out all of the equipments. And then you still have these other things that you still need. You still need more glowy ore, more starry ore, this many days more of them, right? And then builders, you're still going to have almost 300 days of building left and nearly 1,000 days of the lab remaining. So for this model, we're going to assume that we get 655 days of free-to-play progress, which is like 1 3/4 of a year or something. And we're going to subtract that amount from all of the totals that we need for everything, and then we'll do the same calculation as before with this. As you remember from this previous slide, we're going to do that same thing, but now we have different amounts. So using that same example for the Book of Fighting, just a quick look over here at the weighting amounts. We're doing the same thing for weighting. You can see lab comes out much bigger. Shiny ore, builder-based things come out to 0 weight, as makes more sense to me. All right, so Book of Fighting saves you 15 days. Plug that in for the 15 over here. Now there are only 1,493.5 days required for the lab because 655 days of lab have been subtracted. And we multiply that by the new lab weight, the category weight of 55.69, and that's going to bring us to 0.559% of what we need to balance all of our resources to cap out at the same time. That's the goal of this framework. It is not about how much total game progress you get. Okay, then example 2. Same idea, Book of Building saves 15 days. Now you have 15, you divide it by 1,951, multiply by the category weight over here, we get 0.127%, which when you turn it into a human number, it would cost you $5,195 to buy the whole game. This model makes a lot more sense from a perspective of somebody who is playing the game a lot and just making purchases to try to balance out what they come up with. Its limitation, of course, is that you're not measuring total progress of the game. You're measuring something very different, which is how much you are balancing out everything. So I came up with another concept. This time, it's called vibes-based arbitrary weighting. Arbitrary because I just made it up. I did not use formulas to derive all of the category weights mathematically. I just did it based on what I felt made sense. And what I came up with is here. I assigned 50% to the buildings and heroes combined, 30% to the lab, 10% for the hero equipment, which I distributed among the ores according to how scarce they each are, and the last 10% for pets and the builder base, well, 9% for pets and 1% for the builder base stuff. This, I think, is kind of how we think about the game, even though it's not like I can't prove mathematically that this makes the most sense. I think from a player vibe, this is kind of what makes the most sense. So again, we follow the same exact idea. You take the amount of time saved, you divide it by the total amount for the category, you multiply it by the category weight, which in this case was arbitrarily assigned, and you get these numbers here, right? Here's the percentage of the game you would get total progress using this arbitrary weighting system. So with that, it would take $3,635 to buy the whole game at the rate of the Book of Fighting. Book of Building, same idea. We take the amount of time saved, divide it by the total amount of building time needed, multiply it by the category weight, and here's what we get. It would take $5,527 to unlock the whole game, according to this weighting system, for the Book of Building. This one is great, I think, for a lot of reasons, because it brings the ores more in line with how I feel like they should be weighted. The builders in the lab, I think, have a bigger place in people's minds than these other aspects down here. But, you know, it's kind of arbitrary as well. Okay, I had a couple more ideas. This next one is the idea of minimum competitive weighting. In this case, I'm talking about the minimum possible upgrades that you need to play the game competitively. That is, if you wanted to climb to the highest leagues, and if you wanted to participate well in clan wars with the strongest clans. So what you need to get that is actually pretty small compared to everything else. For example, for the lab, you only really need, we're going with an air attack because that needs fewer upgrades. You can just get dragons, dragon riders, and balloons for troops. So only 3 troops, and you can have a totally viable attack. And then I threw in 5 spells. The ones I chose, it doesn't really matter. Most people aren't even going to use, you don't need 5 spells, but it'll come out to about the same amount anyway. For the builders, you need 4 heroes maxed out because only 4 heroes are going to be on defense, and then all of the buildings and the traps as well. So the buildings are going to take the lion's share here. For the ores, I assumed that you would be using 4 common equipments and 4 epic equipments. And, maybe, well, I think that's viable, right? I've seen many attacks, there's some even where they use 5 commons and 3 epics. So this, I think, is a pretty reasonable assumption. You only need 4 pets, 1 for each of the 4 heroes you're using, so the pet number is reduced by about 2/3. And of course, you don't need anything in the builder base. So this is another concept here where we can figure out, using these same ideas, how much it's going to cost you to unlock the whole game. This can be a little bit misleading though, because as you can see, the builders end up being a huge limiting factor. Everything else kind of doesn't matter. So on the one hand, it looks like, yeah, you could get a great value comparatively buying the Book of Fighting compared to the Book of Building. Even though the category weight's much lower, the total amount you need to get to competitiveness is also much lower, which is why it comes out looking like a much better value than the Book of Building. And that's wrong, because if your goal is to become competitive, the main limiting factor is going to be the buildings. And so spending things that unlock buildings is going to be probably the best use of your money to do that, which is why I came up with one final way of evaluating the game. And in this case, we're talking about only defenses. Because going back here, notice after about 8 months, you can have everything you need for a max power attack. But it's going to take you 29 months to have a max power defense. And so if you really want to be competitive in this game, the limiting factor is probably going to be your defenses. So what if we just take only the defenses as all that we're considering? In that case, the weights for all the other categories are 0%, and the weighting for the book, or for the builders, is 100%. So using our same examples as before, here it doesn't matter, you're multiplying by 0. Book of Fighting saves you nothing because you're going to max out your attacks anyway. The Book of Building, in this case, now we're saving 15 hours. You divide it by the total hours you need to get everything maxed out defense-wise, and you get about 0.25% for a Book of Building, which if you multiply that times the cost of a Book of Building, it would take you $2,530 if you could max out the whole base at the rate you're getting. Obviously, in this case, we're only talking about maxing out your base. So still $2,530 at the best possible deal for the Book of Building. Okay, one more thing. In the videos where I'm going to evaluate different shop options, I will also add this variable, which is considering the value instead of based on how much progress you're getting out of the total required for the whole game. I'm looking at how long it would take you to achieve the same thing without paying for it, just using free to play. And there's two different ways to think about that. One is the specific, which is the more obvious one. Like if you save 15 builder days, how many days of real life would it take you to get those 15 days in builder time? Well, you take 15 and you divide it by 6.6, and you would have about 2.5, a little less. So a book of building is worth about 2.5 days of building in game time. Another way of looking at it is to take all of the progress you get every day, because you don't only get builder days, you also get lab days, you get builder-based lab days, you get builder-based builder days, you get pet research days, and you get ores. So if we take all of those different values you get and we combine them into a single variable of progress per day, then we can compare the progress that you're paying for whatever it is you buy against the total amount of progress in a day and see like how much does it advance you, how many days would it take, in an amalgamated sense. And those are going to be the evaluations that I provide for all of the shop options going forward. I think the shop refreshes roughly weekly, so I will use these frameworks to give you an evaluation of different shop items as often as they come out, which I believe is weekly. Okay, I know this was a very technical, complicated mathematically video, but I hope that this provides us with a useful set of frameworks that will make it very easy for us to compare and contrast different shop options that Supercell has going forward. It would really help me out if you press like and subscribe. And of course, I do like hearing from people in the comments, and I hope that you will provide me with questions that I can use to guide what I do in the future. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in my future videos.